The Williams family reunion happened every 3 years at Uncle Robert's sprawling estate in Connecticut. 53 family members gathered on the manicured lawn, reconnecting over barbecue and old stories while children ran between the adults with paper plates and sticky fingers. I stood at the edge of the main seating area holding my plate of potato salad and trying to decide where to sit. The family had naturally clustered into their usual groups. The successful professionals at the head table, the married couples with children at the family tables, and the teenagers sprawled on blankets near the pool. Paya. My cousin Jessica waved me over to where she sat with Brandon, Stephanie and Tyler, the golden cousins as I privately called them. All in their late 20s, all with impressive careers, all with the kind of easy confidence that came from never having to worry about belonging. I walked over with my plate, grateful to be included. Actually, Jessica said as I approached, her smile becoming more pointed, you can't sit with us. I stopped walking. What? Brandon laughed, not looking up from his phone. Yeah, this is kind of an adults-only conversation. We're talking about real estate investments and business stuff. Go sit with the kids, Stephanie added, gesturing toward the blankets where our teenage cousins were sharing TikTok videos. You'd probably relate better to them anyway. Tyler snorted. Yeah, weren't you asking Uncle Robert for career advice earlier? That's so, high school guidance counselor vibes. The four of them dissolved into laughter. Not cruel laughter exactly. Just the casual dismissal of people who genuinely believed they were being helpful by putting me in my appropriate place. I stood there for a moment holding my plate, feeling the familiar heat of humiliation creep up my neck. Around us, the family reunion continued. Conversations about promotions and mortgages and vacation plans. Normal family stuff that I apparently wasn't qualified to participate in. Okay, I said quietly. I'll find somewhere else. Don't be dramatic about it, Jessica called after me. We're just being honest. You'll be more comfortable with people your own level. I walked away from their table and found an empty spot under the large oak tree at the edge of the property. From here I could see the entire reunion spread out before me. The successful adults discussing their achievements, the parents chasing toddlers, the teenagers absorbed in their phones. And me sitting alone under a tree like a child who'd been sent to timeout. I picked at my potato salad and listened to the distant conversations. Brandon was explaining his latest crypto investment. Stephanie was describing her promotion to senior marketing director. Tyler was complaining about having to choose between vacation homes in Vermont and Colorado. Real problems, I murmured to myself. My phone buzzed with a text from my assistant. Helicopter ETA 4:30 p.m. Pilot confirms weather is clear for island departure. I glanced at the time, 4:15 p.m. Perfect timing. I'd been planning to stay for the whole afternoon, maybe even help with cleanup like I usually did. But sitting alone under this tree while my cousins discussed their adult lives, I realized I had better places to be. Much better places. From my spot under the oak tree, I could see Jessica holding court at the cousins' table, probably telling them about her new condo in Boston. She'd mentioned it 3 times since I'd arrived, along with subtle digs about some people still figuring out their lives at 28. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I'd stopped figuring out my life around the time I sold my tech startup for $340 million at age 23. The distant sound of rotor blades made me look up. A sleek black helicopter was approaching from the south, getting larger as it descended toward Uncle Robert's lawn. Conversations began to slow as people noticed the aircraft. Children pointed at the sky. Adults shaded their eyes and squinted upward. Is that? Someone called out. Why is there a helicopter? Aunt Margaret's voice carried across the lawn. The helicopter touched down gently on the grass about 50 yards from the main party area, its rotors creating an impressive whirlwind that sent napkins flying and forced everyone to hold down their paper plates. The pilot emerged and walked toward the family gathering. He was wearing a crisp uniform and carrying a tablet. His eyes swept the crowd until they found me sitting under the tree. Ms. Williams, he called out, his voice carrying clearly in the sudden quiet. Why Williams? Every head turned toward me. I stood up slowly, brushing grass off my simple jeans and t-shirt. That's me. The pilot approached with professional efficiency. Your island is ready, Ms. Williams. The staff has prepared everything according to your specifications. Weather conditions are ideal for departure. The silence on the lawn was absolute. 53 family members stared at me like I'd suddenly sprouted wings. "Thank you, Captain Morrison." I pulled out my phone and showed him the confirmation screen. "Flight plan looks good. How long to reach Paradise Cay?" "Approximately 45 minutes, ma'am. The yacht crew is standing by for your arrival." I nodded and looked back toward my family. Jessica's mouth was hanging open. Brandon had dropped his phone. Stephanie and Tyler were frozen mid-conversation, their plates of food forgotten in their hands. Uncle Robert stepped forward, clearly trying to process what he was witnessing. "Maya, what's going on? Whose helicopter is this?" "It's mine," I said simply. "Yours?" "Well, technically it belongs to Meridian Holdings, but I own Meridian Holdings, so..." I shrugged. "Mine." Aunt Margaret found her voice first. "Maya, sweetie, what are you talking about? You work at that little tech company downtown." "I did work at a tech company downtown. I owned it. I sold it 5 years ago." "Sold it for what?" Uncle Robert asked. $340 million. The silence stretched even longer this time. "Plus equity stakes in 3 other companies," I added. "And a real estate portfolio. And some other investments." Jessica finally closed her mouth long enough to speak. "Maya, that's impossible. You drive a Honda Civic." "I like my Honda Civic. It's reliable. But you live in that tiny apartment." "I like small spaces. They're cozy." "You asked Uncle Robert for career advice." I looked at Uncle Robert, who was staring at me like I'd announced I was from Mars. "I asked him about his experience in municipal bonds. I'm considering investing in infrastructure projects." "Investing how much?" he whispered. "About $200 million to start." Brandon made a choking sound. $200 million? Give or take. The market fluctuates. Stephanie stepped forward, her voice shaky. "Maya, if you really have that much money, why didn't you tell us?" I looked at her for a long moment. "When would I have told you? When you were explaining that I couldn't sit with you because I wasn't successful enough. Or when you suggested I'd be more comfortable with the children." Her face went bright red. "Ms. Williams." Captain Morrison checked his watch. "We should depart soon to maintain our flight schedule." "Of course." I turned back to my family. "I should go. My island staff is expecting me." "Your island?" Tyler's voice cracked slightly. "Paradise Cay. I bought it last year. 37 acres in the Bahamas. It's where I go when I need a break from people." I started walking toward the helicopter, then paused and looked back at Jessica. "By the way, Jess, I heard you talking about your condo in Boston. That's exciting. Real estate is such a good investment." "Thank you," she said weakly. "I should mention, though, I own the building your condo is in. Beacon Hill Properties? That's one of my companies." Jessica's face went completely white. "You've been a great tenant. Always pay your rent on time." "I appreciate that." I continued walking toward the helicopter as Captain Morrison opened the passenger door for me. "Maya, wait." Dad's voice called out from the crowd. I turned to see him pushing through the family members, his face a mixture of confusion and something that might have been pride. "Maya, honey, I don't understand. When did all this happen?" "Over the past 5 years, Dad. I've been trying to tell you, but every time I brought up work, you'd change the subject or suggest I focus on finding a stable job instead of my computer hobby." He stopped walking, the words hitting him like a physical blow. "Your computer hobby was worth $300 million? The sale was worth $340 million. The hobby itself was worth quite a bit more by the time I sold it." Mom appeared beside Dad, tears in her eyes. "Maya, why didn't you insist? Why didn't you make us listen?" I looked at my parents, good people who loved me but had never quite figured out how to take me seriously. "Because I wanted you to be proud of me for who I was, not what I had. I wanted you to believe in me before you knew about the money." "We are proud of you," Mom said desperately. "Are you proud of me or are you proud of my bank account?" She opened her mouth but couldn't find an answer. Captain Morrison cleared his throat diplomatically. "Ms. Williams, we really should depart." I climbed into the helicopter and settled into the leather seat. Through the window, I could see my entire extended family standing in a semicircle on Uncle Robert's lawn, staring up at me like I was ascending to heaven. Which in a way I was. "Ready for departure, ma'am?" Captain Morrison asked as he settled into the pilot's seat. Ready. The rotors spun up and we lifted off from the lawn, rising above the trees and the confused faces of my family. As we gained altitude, I could see Uncle Robert's estate shrinking below us. The perfect lawn, the scattered chairs and tables, the people who had spent the afternoon categorizing me as the family member who needed to sit with the children. My phone buzzed with notifications as we flew east toward the coast. Text messages from cousins who had ignored me for years, suddenly very interested in reconnecting. Missed calls from Jessica, Brandon, Stephanie, and Tyler, the same people who had laughed at the idea of me joining their adult conversation an hour earlier. I turned off my phone and watched Connecticut disappear beneath us, replaced by the blue expanse of the Atlantic Ocean. Paradise Cay came into view 43 minutes later. 37 acres of pristine beaches, tropical gardens, and a stunning villa that I'd designed myself. My yacht, Meridian Dream, was anchored in the crystal-clear bay, and I could see my staff lined up on the dock to welcome me home. "Beautiful approach, ma'am," Captain Morrison said as we descended toward the helicopter pad. "Your staff has prepared the sunset dinner on the terrace as requested." "Perfect. Thank you for the smooth flight." As the helicopter touched down, I felt the familiar peace that came with being in my own space, surrounded by people who valued me for exactly who I was. My staff didn't care about my net worth or my investment portfolio. They cared about doing excellent work and being treated with respect, which I was happy to provide. Marcus, my house manager, approached the helicopter with his usual warm smile. "Welcome home, Ms. Maya. How was the family gathering?" "Educational," I said, accepting his hand as I stepped down from the aircraft. "Very educational." That evening, I sat on my terrace watching the sunset over the Caribbean, a glass of wine in my hand and my laptop open to review the latest reports from my investment managers. My phone, which I'd finally turned back on, showed 47 missed calls and 93 text messages from various family members. I deleted them all without reading them. Well, almost all. I kept one, a voicemail from my 8-year-old cousin Emma, who had been sitting with the kids when the helicopter arrived. "Maya, that was the coolest thing ever. Can I ride in your helicopter sometime? I promise I won't throw up." I smiled and saved the message. The next morning, I received a formal letter delivered by courier to my Manhattan office. It was from Uncle Robert, written on his law firm's letterhead, apologizing for the family's failure to recognize your remarkable achievements, and requesting a meeting to discuss how we might better support each other moving forward. The letter mentioned my impressive business acumen 6 times and my generous spirit 4 times. It did not mention the fact that his own children had spent the afternoon treating me like a charity case. I filed the letter in my interesting but irrelevant folder. 2 weeks later, Jessica called my office. My assistant, Patricia, buzzed me to ask if I wanted to take the call. "What did she say?" I asked. "She said she's your cousin and she needs to apologize for some kind of misunderstanding at a family event." "A misunderstanding." That's what she called it. I considered this for a moment. "Put her through." "Paya." Jessica's voice was bright and nervous. "Oh my God, I'm so glad you answered. I've been trying to reach you for weeks. I've been busy." "I bet you have. Running all those companies and managing all those investments. I had no idea you were so accomplished. What can I do for you, Jessica?" "Well, first I want to apologize. For the reunion. For not letting you sit with us. It was a huge misunderstanding." "How was it a misunderstanding?" We didn't know. If we had known about your success, we never would have treated you that way." I leaned back in my chair. "So you're sorry you were rude to me because you found out I'm wealthy?" No, that's not what I mean. I mean we're sorry we misjudged you." "You didn't misjudge me, Jessica. You judged me perfectly accurately based on your values. You decided I wasn't worth including because you thought I wasn't successful enough. Now that you know I'm successful, you want to include me. Maya, that's not fair." "What's not fair is spending 3 hours at a family reunion being treated like a child who doesn't deserve a seat at the grown-up table." "We were wrong. We were completely wrong." "Yes, you were. But not for the reasons you think." Jessica was quiet for a moment. "What do you mean?" "You were wrong because you treated a family member badly, period. It shouldn't matter how much money I have. It shouldn't matter what my job is. I'm your cousin and you were cruel to me." You're right. You're absolutely right. But here's the thing, Jess. If I had told you that day that I was worth $500 million, you would have immediately invited me to sit with you. You would have hung on my every word. You would have been fascinated by my opinions about real estate and business. Well, yes, probably. So your apology isn't really about treating me badly. It's about missing an opportunity to network with someone wealthy. The line went quiet. Maya, I really am sorry. Not because of your money. Because I hurt you. Are you? Or are you sorry because your rent just went up 20% and you found out your landlord is your cousin you were rude to? Another pause. How did you know about the rent increase? Because I approved it. Your building is undervalued for the neighborhood. Market rate adjustment. Maya, you can't punish me by raising my rent. I'm not punishing you. I'm running a business. Your rent is still below market rate for Beacon Hill. But we're family. Yes, we are. And when I needed my family to treat me with basic respect, they told me to sit with the children. Jessica's voice became very small. What can I do to make this right? I looked out my office window at the Manhattan skyline. 12 of the buildings in my view were properties I owned or had investments in. Jessica's building in Boston was just one small piece of a portfolio that generated millions in revenue every month. Nothing, I said finally. Nothing. There's nothing you can do to make it right, Jess. Because you can't undo who you really are. And who you really are is someone who judges people by their bank accounts. That's not true. It's completely true. And you know what? That's your choice. But it's also my choice not to have people like that in my life. Maya, please. We're family. Family doesn't charge admission based on net worth. I hung up. 6 months later, I received an invitation to Tyler's wedding. It came with a handwritten note. Maya, I know we haven't talked since the reunion, but you're family and we'd love to have you there. Plus, would love to catch up about investment opportunities if you're free. I sent a beautiful crystal vase from Tiffany and a polite note declining the invitation due to a scheduling conflict. The scheduling conflict was a massage appointment on my island. A year after the helicopter incident, Mom called to tell me that the family had decided to cancel the Williams family reunions. Why? I asked, though I suspected I knew the answer. Well, things have been awkward since that day at Uncle Robert's. People don't know how to act around each other anymore. How to act around each other or how to act around me. Mom sighed. Both, I guess. Everyone feels bad about how they treated you, but they're also intimidated now. Intimidated by what? By your success. By your money. They feel like they can't relate to you anymore. I almost laughed. Mom, I'm the same person I was at that reunion. The same person I've always been. The only thing that changed is their perception of me. I know, honey. But money changes things. Money doesn't change things. People's reactions to money change things. Maybe. But the result is the same. The family is fractured. I thought about this for a moment. Mom, at that reunion I was sitting alone under a tree because my cousins told me I wasn't successful enough to sit with them. Now you're telling me I'm too successful to sit with them. Do you see the problem here? Yes, she said quietly. I do. The problem isn't my money. The problem is that this family only knows how to relate to people based on their perceived status. When they thought I was unsuccessful, I was dismissed. Now that they know I'm successful, they're intimidated. Either way, they can't just treat me like a person. You're right. So maybe it's better that the reunions are canceled. Maybe everyone needs to figure out how to value people for who they are instead of what they have. Mom was quiet for a long moment. Maya, do you think you'll ever forgive us? Forgive you for what? For not seeing you. For not believing in you. For treating you like you didn't matter. I looked out at the Manhattan skyline again, thinking about the girl who had sat alone under a tree while her cousins discussed their adult lives. I've already forgiven you, Mom. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. And it doesn't mean going back to the way things were. What does it mean? It means I understand that you did the best you could with who you were at the time. But it also means I'm not going to put myself in situations where I'm dismissed or diminished. Even if it means missing family events? Even if it means missing family events. We talked for a few more minutes about other things. Her garden, Dad's golf game, my latest acquisition in the Maldives. Normal conversation between a mother and daughter. When we hung up, I felt something I hadn't felt in years when talking to my family. Peace. 2 years later, I received a completely different kind of message. A letter from Emma, the 8-year-old cousin who had asked about riding in my helicopter. She was 10 now, and her letter was written in careful cursive on lined paper. Dear Maya, it read, Mom says you're really successful and rich, but you're still nice to me. I'm starting a lemonade stand business. Do you have any advice? Also, do you still have that helicopter? I haven't thrown up since I was 7. I wrote back immediately, giving her detailed advice about profit margins, customer service, and location strategy. I also included a photo of my helicopter and a promise that when she turned 16 she could have a ride. Emma was the only family member who didn't seem to care about my money at all. She was just excited that her cousin was good at business and might teach her how to be good at it too. A month later, Emma sent me a profit report from her lemonade stand, complete with charts and graphs she'd made herself. Her net profit for the summer, $247. I framed the report and hung it in my office, right next to my first stock certificate and the photo from the day I rang the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange. Some family bonds, I realized, are strong enough to survive anything. Even helicopters. The rest aren't worth preserving.